Hi friends. Today we embark on another captivating journey into the shadowy world of true crime stories. Get ready to investigate, discover, and reveal the secrets of a dark and dramatic case. Are you prepared to dive into this thrilling investigation? Let's begin now. Randall Mamet is a successful businessman who lives with his wife Sydney, a devoted homemaker, and Sydney's stepdaughter, Celeste, in a luxurious home. Neighbors often admire them as an ideal family, rich, attractive, and happy. However, beneath the perfect surface of meticulously manicured lawns and luxurious dinner parties, a silent undercurrent of sin and violence draws them into a vortex of betrayal and taboo desire. From a dissatisfied marriage, the story gradually turns into a shocking tragedy when the relationship between stepfather and stepdaughter leads to a tragic confrontation, ending in death and ruined lives. Broken. It all started with a chance meeting between Randall and Sydney at a charity gala in Philadelphia in the spring of 2010. Randall, then 35 years old, was a rising star in the world of finance, famous with a sharp intellect and charismatic personality. Sydney, 32, divorced with a young daughter, works as an interior designer for wealthy clients. Their whirlwind courtship quickly attracts each other, leading to a passionate and promising love affair. Randall is attracted to Sydney's elegance and wit, while Sydney finds in Randall the stability and success she craves after her previous tumultuous marriage. After only 6 months of dating, Randall proposed to Sydney with a sparkling diamond ring, making his friends jealous. Sydney's 7-year-old daughter, Celeste, shines as the flower girl, happy to see her mother marry the man who will become her stepfather. During the first few years, the Mamet family seemed to flourish. Randall's career progressed rapidly, leading him to become a partner at the firm. Sydney takes on the role of the perfect wife, hosting parties and charity events, cementing their status among the upper class. She loved Celeste, making sure she had everything from the best schools to lavish vacations. However, as the newness gradually wears off, cracks begin to appear in their marriage. Randall's long work hours and frequent business trips leave Sydney feeling lonely and abandoned. She gave up her career to support her husband, but now she feels increasingly isolated in the large house. Sydney's attempts to rekindle the fire of love are met only with indifference from Randall, who seems more interested in work. Their conversations, once filled with laughter and dreams, were now limited to family and Celeste's school schedule. When Celeste enters high school, the Mamet family's marriage exists mainly for formality. They slept in separate rooms, using the reason Randall snored to explain to curious friends. Their interactions became cold, more like between business partners than loving husband and wife. Sydney immerses herself in her volunteer work and motherhood to Celeste, living vicariously through her daughter's successes and her own social life. Meanwhile, Randall increasingly threw himself into work, taking on more responsibilities at the company and spending less time at home. Comfort with their current lifestyle and worries about the effect of divorce on Celeste keep them trapped in a loveless union. Little do they know that the perfect appearance they maintain is on the brink of collapse, because something unexpected and tragic is about to happen. As Celeste enters her teens, the Mamet family dynamic begins to change. At the age of 18, she became a beautiful young woman with a lively spirit. The relationship between Celeste and her mother Sydney is close but sometimes strained due to Sydney's overprotectiveness. Randall, the stepfather, is initially friendly, but his interactions with Celeste become complicated as his marriage to Sydney cools. Nearing age 50, Randall began to pay more attention to Celeste's life, attending her performances and discussing college plans. Sydney is happy to see Randall close to Celeste, but gradually feels worried about the way he looks at her. Celeste also feels attracted to Randall and begins to dress more carefully when he is at home. Family tension is increasing. Sydney becomes increasingly worried when she sees her daughter and husband becoming close, seemingly to the exclusion of her. As Celeste's high school graduation approaches, the big house becomes a powder keg. None of them could have foreseen the impending explosion and the devastating consequences that would follow. On a rainy April night, Sydney goes out of town to attend a charity event, leaving Randall and Celeste at home. They decided to watch a movie together with a bottle of wine. Randall assumed Celeste was old enough to have a few drinks under her stepfather's supervision. As the wine flows and the storm outside rages, their restraint disappears. Celeste, with alcohol-induced boldness, confesses that she has always found Randall attractive. Instead of refusing, Randall feels drawn to Celeste's confessions. One touch leads to another, and they soon become entangled in a passionate encounter on the sofa. The next morning, they felt confused and ashamed, vowing that this would not happen again, but the flow of lust had been aroused. Stealing glances, secret kisses, and secret messages begin to appear, making the situation more and more complicated. They justify their actions. Randall is not Celeste's biological father. Sydney has been estranged for many years, and love between adults cannot be wrong. However, guilt still haunts them, especially Celeste. She saw the pain and doubt in her mother's eyes, knowing that if she was discovered, things would get worse. But she can't stop, addicted to the feeling of forbidden romance. Randall keeps his distance in other aspects of his life. When he is with Sydney, he plays the role of a distant but still devoted husband. To his colleagues, he is a thoughtful professional. But in secret moments with Celeste, he allows himself to feel the passion he thought was lost. Their love affairs became more frequent and daring. Motel dates under the guise of a college tour and heated encounters in Randall's car in secluded places. They swear each time will be the last, but are drawn back to each other. As spring turns to summer, Celeste and Randall's love grows stronger as she enters her first year of college. The impending separation ignites their passion. Each meeting becomes urgent. They take bigger risks, with Randall finding reasons to visit Celeste and Celeste using study group excuses to justify trips home. Every time they meet, they feel a taboo thrill, like a fire silently burning inside. Their behavior begins to affect other relationships. Randall grows more distant from Sydney, feeling guilty when he looks at her. He immersed himself in work as an escape and an excuse for his absence. Celeste also has difficulty connecting with her college friends, always suppressing the secret that's waiting to explode. The affair begins to change both Randall and Celeste. Randall, energized by his relationship with Celeste, pays more attention to his appearance. He hit the gym, updated his wardrobe, and even considered restoring his hair. Colleagues noticed positive changes in him. Celeste, on the other hand, is torn between joy and shame. She excelled in her studies but struggled in her social life, rejecting advances from her friends because she was still tied to her stepfather. There are near-revealing moments like when Sydney almost meets them by the pool, and when a friend spots Randall leaving Celeste's room. Despite the risk of being discovered, they convince each other that the secret will be kept. They dream about the future, with Randall talking about divorce and starting a new life with Celeste. However, when the lies necessary to maintain Randall's current status are discovered by Sydney, the pressure begins to take its toll on both of them. Expenses mount and Celeste's academic performance begins to decline, revealing that the cracks in their double life are widening. They continue to maintain their relationship, believing that their love is worth any price. But the price they have to pay will be higher than they imagined, and it is closer than they thought. During a lunch with friends, Beatrice casually reveals that she saw Randall and Celeste having a tense conversation at the coffee shop, which sends a chill down Sydney's spine. Despite trying to change the subject, the seeds of doubt were sown. Sydney begins to pay more attention to the interactions between her husband and daughter. She noticed the looks, the jokes, and the reasons they were alone together. Despite mounting evidence, Sydney still falls into a state of denial, unwilling to face the terrible truth. But every day, the truth gets closer to the surface, threatening to disrupt their lives. The day Sydney's world fell apart began like any other day. On a warm June morning, she decides to surprise Randall at the office, hoping to rekindle their relationship. However, when she arrived, she discovered that Randall had left early, citing a family emergency. The feeling of cold blood running down her spine worried Sydney, because she didn't know there was any emergency in the family. With shaking hands, Sydney opened the tracking app and saw that Randall's location was not at home or the hospital, but at an unknown address on the outskirts of town. She drove to a small motel that rented by the hour, where Randall's car was parked in the parking lot. Sitting in the car, Sydney hesitates about whether to continue investigating or not. However, when Celeste's Honda shows up and her daughter rushes into a motel room, Sydney's world falls apart. Finally, acting on instinct instead of conscious awareness, Sydney got out of the car. She raised her hand to knock on the door, then stopped, her fist shaking in the air. From inside, she could hear Celeste's muffled laughter, Randall's deeper chuckle. The sounds of happiness and intimacy twisted like a knife into her gut. With a deep breath, Sydney quietly opened the door. The laughter inside suddenly stopped, replaced by dead silence. Panicked whispers rang out from inside. Sydney knocked louder on the door again. This time her calm facade began to crack as she screamed. The silence lasted for what seemed like an eternity before she heard movement inside. The door opened slowly, revealing Randall's hair and hastily buttoned shirt. Sydney could see Celeste with a face full of guilt and fear. In that moment, as Sydney looked from her husband to her daughter, the full weight of their betrayal crashed down on her. Her already fragile world shattered completely. The room became stuffy when Sydney entered. Her eyes passed over Randall and Celeste in silence, hearing only the hum of the air conditioner and the pounding of her heart in her ears. Randall was the first to speak, trying to explain, but Sydney interrupted him with a strangely calm voice. When Randall defends Celeste, Sydney laughs, and the argument quickly escalates. Years of accumulated resentment and betrayal explode. Sydney accuses Randall of taking advantage of Celeste's naivety, while Randall insists that their love is real and that Celeste has grown up. Celeste stood between her mother and the man she loved, trying to reconcile and swearing that nothing was wrong, but Sydney had lost her mind. For her, this was the ultimate betrayal, not only as a wife but also as a mother. As the screaming reached its peak, Sydney noticed Randall moving toward the bedside table. She suddenly saw a flash of metal and realized he was reaching for his gun for defense. Time seemed to stop as Sydney rushed forward, determined to stop him from doing the unthinkable. Celeste, seeing her mother's sudden actions, mistakes it for an attack on Randall and tries to intervene. A deafening gunshot rang out in the small room. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then Celeste fell to the floor, red stains on her shirt. Sydney's scream of pain shattered the silence as she frantically tried to stop the blood from flowing from her daughter's wound. The horror of what happened slowly dawns on them, their secrets and consequences far beyond anything they could have imagined. Gunfire at the motel prompted a quick response from local law enforcement. Just a few minutes later, the parking lot was filled with the flashing lights of police cars and ambulances. First responders discovered the tragedy in room 114, with Celeste lying on the floor, barely alive, despite Sydney's desperate efforts to stop the bleeding. Randall collapsed in a corner, his eyes empty, his gun lying on the floor where he dropped it. Sydney, her hands and clothes covered in her daughter's blood, alternated between frantic pleas and wordless sobs. Detective Liam Donovan, a veteran of the police force, is in charge of the scene. When Celeste is taken to the hospital, Donovan begins the difficult task of piecing together what happened in the motel room. The physical evidence was clear: a gunshot fired a victim, the gun owned by Randall. However, the motive of the incident is a more difficult question. Sydney and Randall give conflicting stories, both too panicked to provide a coherent account of events. As news of the shooting spread, the quiet community was shaken by shock and disbelief. The Mamet family has always been considered a perfect family, successful and actively involved in local charities. The idea that violence could arise between them was unimaginable to neighbors and friends. In the following days, as Celeste fought for her life in the intensive care unit, Detective Donovan and his team worked tirelessly to unravel the truth. They reviewed phone records, interviewed friends and colleagues, slowly learning about the family's background. A picture gradually emerges of a family that is not as perfect as they appear. As Detective Donovan digs deeper into the case, the perfect cover falls apart quickly. Interviews with family, friends, and colleagues paint a long, loveless marriage, held together only by appearances and financial convenience. Sydney's best friend, Beatrice, provides crucial information about Sydney's suspicions in the months leading up to the shooting, tearfully recounting the lunches in which Sydney confided her fears about Randall's possible infidelity, without ever suspecting the true nature of betrayal. Randall's colleagues describe him as seemingly rejuvenated in recent months, often talking about a new love, which they attribute to a midlife crisis. No one could have imagined that the object of his affection was his own daughter. However, Celeste's college roommate, Zoe, provided the most damning evidence. Assured of police confidentiality, Zoe shares a treasure trove of Celeste's text messages, in which she details her affair with Randall in the romantic language of a young woman in love. The digital trail has proven to be a goldmine for investigators. Phone records show hundreds of calls and texts between Randall and Celeste, often at odd hours. Financial records also show a series of expensive gifts from Randall to Celeste, including designer clothes, jewelry, and even a car. Weekend trips disguised as business or university visits. As the evidence of Randall and Celeste's deception becomes clearer, the affair is no longer a temporary infatuation, but has lasted more than a year, meticulously planned and hidden from Sydney. The revelation of the incident shed new light on developments in the motel room. Initially, the incident appeared to be a case of accidental shooting during an argument, but now looks more like a potential crime of passion. As Celeste slowly recovers in the hospital, the big question is who really pulled the trigger. Was it Randall who tried to silence Celeste to protect herself? Or Sydney, in rage at their betrayal? Or is Celeste herself, overwhelmed by the guilt of confronting her mother? The reality may be more complicated than people initially think. The district attorney decided to charge both Randall and Sydney Mamet with attempted murder. Randall, with the appearance of a successful businessman, now looks tired and defeated in an orange jumpsuit. His defense team, led by high-powered attorney Xavier Brockton, argued that the shooting was a tragic accident, the result of a family fight over guns. In contrast, Sydney appears to have aged in years since the incident. Her lawyer sees her as a victim, a woman betrayed by her husband and daughter, acting in self-defense when she believed Randall was reaching for the gun to silence them both. The question of Celeste's role in the incident loomed large throughout the proceedings. As the only witness besides her parents, her testimony was very important. However, Celeste is still recovering from her injuries and has invoked her Fifth Amendment rights, refusing to testify against either parent. Randall Mamet accepted a plea agreement. In a silent courtroom, he pleaded guilty to aggravated assault and received a 10-year prison sentence. As he is led away in handcuffs, he looks into Sydney's eyes one last time, expressing the pain, betrayal, and regret that have torn their family apart. The charges against Sydney are dropped, leaving her a free woman, but not changed by the ordeal. Within months, she sold the house and moved out of state in search of a fresh start, away from whispers and judgmental eyes. Celeste, while recovering from her physical injuries, faces the difficult task of healing her emotional and psychological scars. She dropped out of college and entered intensive therapy to deal with the trauma and complicated emotions surrounding her relationship with Randall. Her relationship with Sydney remains strained, with the breach of trust between mother and daughter becoming a difficult chasm to overcome. The Mamet case has faded from the national spotlight, but its impact lingers. It serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most perfect family can hide dark secrets. Communities rocked by the outbreak of violence among them began initiatives to address domestic violence and promote healthier family dynamics. Please ensure to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell to stay updated on all the intriguing cases in the True Crime Stories series. Be the first to receive updates on dramatic and thrilling crime stories.